Hello. As a kid, my grandmother Vera used to make lefse for our family for Easter and Christmas, one of the best things of the holidays. And as the generations turn, it's time for my family to be able to capture that again in all the different places we find ourselves. So we thought we'd make a video of how we go about making the lefse. My family's going to be going away for some vacation. We're going to take some of this with, and so we'll start. Here's what you need for lefse. You need, they make it in increments of 10 pounds of potatoes, some heavy cream, and butter. As you can see, all the ingredients, they show us that this is how the Scandinavians would preserve calories for the winter. And we'll start today. It's a 2-day process by peeling the potatoes. We're going to boil the potatoes, we're going to rice the potatoes, and we're going to mix them together. And then tomorrow morning we will go and roll out this mixture as it's had a chance to settle and, more importantly, to cool, and show all the different steps in making the lefse. The recipe itself we'll try and attach to the video, but essentially it's 10 pounds of the potatoes. We're choosing to use white potatoes. Some people use the russets, some people use the reds or the goldens. But once on the radio, the Minnesota Lefse lady at the state fair said she liked the Kennebecks, the white potatoes. So we're going to try it this time and see how it goes. But essentially the recipe is 10 pounds of potatoes, 1 cup of the heavy whipping cream to that 10 potatoes, and a 1/4 pound of butter. And then the flour and the salt that's used is just in small amounts, and we'll talk about that when we actually roll them out together. Well, we begin. So we peel the potatoes, which isn't rocket science. And then afterwards, we like to cut them so that they're all about the uniform size. So they cook not only more quickly, but then they're easier to put into the ricer. So I like to take and make this, like this size potato, I'll cut it in quarters, like so. And then place them in water while we wait. That's it. And the peeled and sliced potatoes, they're put in water, and now they're going to boil for about half an hour until they're fully cooked. So some of the great tools that make this possible are potato ricers. What they seem to do is not only put the potatoes into a texture consistency that works for this, but they aerate it as well. So now our task is to go ahead and rice some of these potatoes, which makes them look like this. So to the riced potatoes, to the boiled and riced potatoes, we add now some of the fats that are going to be part of the lefse as well. They include, for a 10-pound mixture, it includes a 1/4 pound of butter and a cup of heavy whipping cream. Our mixer isn't all that large, so we're doing it in halves. So what I've got here is a 1/4 pound, or a 1/8 of a pound, half a stick of butter that's going to go into this hot riced potato mixture, and my 1/2 cup of cream. In our case, we're doing a little bit more than 10 pounds, so I'm going to augment that just a bit. Pause it. So essentially it's just making mashed potatoes with lots of cream and lots of butter. So one of the concerns with the lefse is to not have it be too moist and to not have too much flour, which we'll talk about when we actually roll it out tomorrow morning. But here we have, now in our case it happens to be about 12 pounds, 12 and a half pounds of boiled and then riced and then mixed white potatoes. And we're going to put it in the fridge overnight to cool it. And we could cover it with some cellophane foil, some of that. But one person has suggested using parchment paper or something like that, or wax paper. Just putting it over the top, which will keep it from drying out too much, but will actually allow a little of the vapor, a little of the moisture from the mixture to evaporate over the night. We're set. We're gonna let it rest. We'll see you in the morning. So it's the morning after preparing the lefse, and we're ready. We've got coffee and then some of the materials we'll use. The lefse itself, it just sat and cooled over the night, and now our task is to mix it with the other two ingredients. So far we've had 10 pounds of flour and a cup of heavy whipping cream and a quarter pound or 1 stick of butter. To that we'll add the magic other ingredient from the Scandinavian spices, the salt, and we'll use flour. And the way they mix that is, it is 3 cups of this, which we're going to rice again in here, and then we'll have that with I think 3/4 a cup of flour, and I think it's 3/4 teaspoon of salt. I'll check that before we go. But there's some tools we'll use. Can I show you? This is a board that you can buy commercially from this company Bethany, which is in Iowa. You can find it on Amazon or the web. And on that is attached some canvas. It's just put on, strung tightly. And this canvas is going to be the place where we roll out the lefse. Now the thing is, our task is to try and roll out the lefse without it sticking to this. And the way we do that is a very, very, very liberal, abundant, lavish use of flour, not on the lefse, but on the cloth. You first coat this, and then more than coating this with flour, it's almost like you impress it. You just push that in there so that in the end, when you're rolling this, it's rolling on this coat of flour. And you're aided in that by having one of these rolling pins, which is serrated both vertically and horizontally, and you can see it's already impressed with the flour from last time. I just left it there, and I hope that doesn't cause like botulism. But we'll also coat this with flour. And what's amazing is it's really counterintuitive, but the flour that's impressed in here and the flour that really liberally coats here doesn't really transfer too much, it doesn't seem, to the lefse, but it makes it sort of non-stick. And that's what you want, is to roll this out and not have it stick. There's some technique to it, and it's only possible to acquire that technique by doing it. And the technique really is to make sure that when you're rolling it, you're not pushing down, but you're really just sort of rolling this over it. You're almost letting the weight of this do the work. And you try and achieve as nice a lefse shape as one can. There's no federal regulation involved with it, so one that's not perfectly round is still edible, but it brings shame to the maker. So as round as one can get. And then from there, we take it over and use these lefse, what would you call them? Sticks? What's that?
Whisk.
It's not a whisk. It's not a whisk. It's a stick, and you slide that under the lefse. Sometimes, you'll make sure it's not sticking all over. You lift it off, and if you can imagine it like this, a lefse that's here, They call them lefse by one. You slide it under, make sure it doesn't stick, and you lift it off, and you take it over to the grill. This grill is also available from Bethany or other places. There's two types. There's one that's the classic sort of aluminum, or there's one now that's got a non-stick surface. But I'm told that the non-stick surface, you know, all the non-stick surface stuff, you're not supposed to heat it up really, really hot because it flakes off and then you get the Alzheimer's. So we just go with this because the idea is to do this really, really hot. We do it at almost 500 degrees. So this is preheated. We'll see if this bursts into flames. You just lay it on there and then roll the lefse onto here. And then you flip it once, don't you? I've never really been allowed to cook. I'm more of a roller. My family, they help that. You take it off and, oh, that is hot. And you, you roll it back the other way. And then once it's done, you take the lefse over here and you lay it out on some towels, regular towels. And the purpose of this is to let some of the moisture escape. Not too much, you know, but enough, because if you package it right away when it's moist, it'll mush and it'll go poorly much more quickly. So that's the general process. Now we're going to actually start to do it. You can tell by my shirt, we've been working, and we'll walk through how we mix it. The recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of flour, and I'm using a little bit more because I found that my dough was really wet, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, which we add first, and then we very carefully whisk it together with our fingers. Well, that's what we do. Now we've got the potato mix, and our ricer, we found out, holds about 1.5 cups each time, and the recipe calls for 3 pounds of riced potato to the mix of flour and salt. So you put this in, do a couple of batches of it. And it rices. No pause. So now I find it helpful to sort of use my fingers and the dry flour to, in a way, kind of almost tease that to mix. It dries it out, but it makes for a nice mix. And what we'll do is we'll probably get then, from this, you form little balls that we're going to roll out, and I'll show you how to do that. Let me make sure this is kind of as mixed as it can be, so we don't have any loose flour. And it's sticking pretty well. We've been experimenting today as well with a few different techniques of taking this off of the canvas and putting it on the grill, and we'll show you that in a bit as well. This again is our first time using those white potatoes, and we're finding out that they're just a little damper. They have a tendency to fall apart a bit more than the russets, but the taste seems to be better. Now, you form this into balls that are about the size more of a baseball. I think they say 3/4 cup, but I found that about a baseball size is about the right size for our grill. And I formed them moistly. Ended up with, in fact, 9. And I'm going to make sure they're all sort of uniform size. All right, so the big thing is to try and make sure that as you form them now, that 2 things become incorporated. One, I like to form them like a hockey puck to make sure that the edges are nice and wet, so that you don't end up with sort of a frayed end of the lefse. It won't be ragged, but it'll have a nice crisp out, or not crisp, but a nice defined round. Now I'm getting ready to roll it, but it's really wet, and that's a good thing. So we do two things. One, I spent 6 years in Japan, and so I think of like, this reminds me of the sumo ring. Here we go. And we toss some flour down, like the sumo wrestlers would toss rice, or salt rather, to purify the ring before they go in. And now I put a little flour just to coat it. And now here we go. Like a hamburger patty size maybe. Make sure the edges are round and are holding together as much as possible. And now we're getting ready to roll. And here we come. This is floured. And you notice I'm moving it over the surface. I'm not pushing down hardly at all. And trying to make sure that it's round. And that I work the edges and not always keep pressing in the middle. If I keep pressing in the middle all the time, it's more likely to stick in the middle. But here and I've got a lot of flour on the board. If I didn't, you'd begin to see the words Bethany and the dimension markers of the lefse. Now my roller here is getting a little flour, or getting a little moisture on it, and so you see that piece that was taken out of it. That's because something stuck to it. So before I roll it next time, I'm gonna have to put more flour on it. Now I've got my lefse stick, and I take it through and make sure that nothing sticks. And this is the technique we found that works best. We began when we were really novices, like, just recently, and would lift it off like this, and then it would tear along the sides, but we couldn't get it to the grill in time. So now I'm rolling it a little here, and I'm gonna get ready to move to the grill. Go back over and watch as on the grill, which is at 500 degrees, I'll roll it onto the grill. And my grill master, he's the one who cooks. I really don't cook. But what could you say without showing your face on the screen? What could you say about what you look for cooking?
Eventually you're going to be able to see through to the bottom side of it, as it's so thin, and you can see a little bit of the dimpling on the underside. Just the faintest amount of that should show. Any more than that, and it's probably too done on the one side. Once you flip it over, and you don't have to roll it the entire time, you can just lift it from the middle, because it's a bit firmer after having one side cooked. You just need to do it for a very little amount of time on the underside as well. And it'll just come down to feel and technique. It took us a few tries to get to that point, but we're pretty much there.
Now you can see some signs of shame on this. Look at where it's ragged. Oh, shame. And look here, maybe a little too much flour got on there, but we'll live with it. We'll eat it, and we'll try and learn from our mistakes. Is it about ready? You can see the steam coming off it, the water coming out of it, which is good. Is it about ready to flip, Cookmaster?
Yeah, you can see some of the dimpling down here a little bit. So if you just give it a lift and flip it over.
This is like the first time I've been allowed to cook.
Look at that. It's just perfectly done first side.
No, there's a tear.
Well,
and there's a fold here.
From a cooking perspective.
Yeah. And then if you move over to the table, let's show what we have here. This is how we dry them. We put them on, or this is what the ladies at the church that I worked at, this is how they showed me how to dry them. You put them on towels, and then later we'll package them after they've had a chance to air. This is one of our mistakes. This really looks like it is too. We'll eat this along the way. This is pretty much, this is pretty much what we do with the lefse. It's that traditional way that the Norwegians have gone ahead and preserved calories for the winter. Oh, a little
long on the other side.
done. A little done.
Again, it doesn't take nearly as long on that second side as it does the first.
Make it look better. There we go. That looks better. That looks better. And that's all we have for how to make the lefse. It's just that tradition of combining those simple things that people had on hand to make something that's tasty. We hope that the video gives you some room and some permission, some inspiration to try and make it yourself. Thanks, cousins, for watching.